Hey everybody, how's it going? Hey, so today we're going to talk about Nehemiah chapter 4. That's what we're going to deal with, Nehemiah chapter 4. Nehemiah and his men are engaged in a serious work. They are literally rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. In fact, it's so serious that the future of Jerusalem and Israel depends on the successful completion of this work. As they labor, they provide a valuable illustration for those engaged in the work of the Lord in these days. As you know, the church is facing a great task. Now, I don't want to place a pressure on you, but the very future of our own church depends on the successful completion of this task. Here it is. God gives us some pointers in this text that I just want to bring out that can help us work while we're working. So wisdom while working. Wisdom while working. The first thing that we see in wisdom while working is you have to recognize the dangers around you. While they are building this wall, they have people who are criticizing them. The enemies of Israel mocked and ridiculed the work they were attempting to do. You might as well face it. Anytime you are determined to do something for God, there will always be those ready to criticize what you do. Dale Carnage said it like this: any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain. And most of them do. So not only do they have to fight criticism, but then they also have to fight conspiracy. So not only do you have to deal with people judging you, telling you, hey, I might have did it differently, hey, I would have did it this way, but then you also have to deal with people who are conspiring against you, that they are plotting against you. They literally are plotting on how they are going to tear down the wall. You're doing such a great work, and people are already trying to plot down of how our downfall should be. They're trying to plot how they can stop things from happening. And so here it is that you have to consider the dangers. Not only do you have to consider the criticism, not only do you have to consider the conspiracy, but watch this, you also got to consider the complaints. Because guess what? It's not always outside people who are attacking you, but there are some times where the attack will come up in your own church. The people around you will start complaining. We just dealt with Exodus chapter 15, where literally it is the complaints of the people that says, hey, we can't drink this water. No, God, we can't do this. And you got to be careful when you're looking at the dangers. You got to look at those who criticize and judge you. You got to look at those who are plotting against you, but you also got to look at those that are within your own ranks that will literally complain and literally have nothing good to say. My mama said, if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say nothing at all. So not only did they have to consider the dangers around them, but then secondly, we see that they rely on the deity above them. Woo! When the attacks came, Nehemiah and his men did the right thing. They turned to God in faith. They exercised their privilege of prayer. Watch this. The first thing that we see in relying on the deity is that their leaders prayed. Woo! Nehemiah called on God. He went to the Lord looking for help and direction. Let me challenge all of the leaders of this church to beware of turning to men and man-made organizations for your help in these days. Look to God. He's been guiding his people through treacherous waters for thousands of years, and he had helped others, and he's even helped us, and he'll continue to help us. But not only did the leaders pray, but watch this, the leaders influenced the laborers to pray. So not only does pastor have to pray, not only does Deke have to pray, not only does the leadership team have to pray, but we also have to encourage others to pray with us. Ooh, God. It wasn't just the leaders who called on God, but everyone involved in the work bathed the work in prayer. They all turned to the Lord in dependence upon him and believed for help that they needed. The best thing this church can do right now is come together in the spirit of united, focused prayer. You need the Lord and his help in these hours. If you will call on him, he will hear you and he will help you. They were told not to fear the enemy, but to focus on the Lord. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to learn to switch our minds to not fear the enemy, but focus on God. Why? Because the Bible says, greater is he that is within us than he that is within the world. The Bible says that all things will work together for the good of those that are called and love the Lord. So not only is the leaders, but it's also the laborers. Not only do we see that they recognize the dangers around them, not only did they rely on the deity above them, but watch this, they respond to the duties assigned to them. They didn't just pray about the work and then think they were finished. They knew that prayer was just the beginning. After prayer, it's time to get to work. They were united in the process of the work. Notice the word we and the phrase people had a mind. This expressed a unity of purpose and work. These folks were working together, and as a result, the work was accomplished. You must understand that the process for this work is going to go far more smoothly if you all will work together. We've got to be together in this thing. It's got to be united. Watch this. They were united in the protection of the work. So not only are they united in the process, but they're also united in the protection. Ooh, while they all worked, they all watched. Ooh, Bible says that you got to watch, fight, and pray. Nehemiah says, watch this. Nehemiah tells them, not only do you need to work, but you also need to be armed. Woo-hoo-hoo. Can I tell you that not only do you need to pray, but you also need to be armed, because there's some folk that will come to attack? That you not only need to watch, but you also need to pray. Everyone had each other's best interests at heart. For them, the big picture was the main focus. Each member of this church should keep this on his or her eyes open for the slightest hint of trouble. If each person is watching for the enemy, he will have more of a difficult time getting his foot in the door. The strongest walls are useless if the gates are weak, or if the gatekeepers are careless and disloyal. The Great Wall of China was penetrated by enemies at least 3 times, and each time the guards were bribed. The church desperately needs strong gates and loyal gatekeepers. Woo! But not only, watch this, not only were they united in the process, not only were they united in the protection of the work, but watch this, they were also united in the progress of the work. As the work progressed, they were all in it together until it was completed. Each person had a different function, but they were all in it together. This is the essential to the success of a church. Unless the church works together as a team, it will surely accomplish nothing for eternal value. Have you ever wondered why the Canadian geese fly only in the V formation? For years, specialists in aeronautics wondered the same thing. 2 engineers collaborated in the wind tunnel, and what happens in such a V formation? Each goose in the flapping his wings creates an upward lift for the goose that follows. When all the geese do their part in the V formation, the whole flock has a 71% greater flying range than if each bird flew alone. Each depends upon the other to get to its destination. Something else. When a goose begins to lag behind the others, honk it back. The others honk it back into place. Now let us learn from God's animals creation. The church needs to fly in a spiritual V formation, honking one another into steadfastness, and it be at least 71% easier to live the faithful Christian life flying with the flock as opposed to going in it alone. Hebrews 10:24 says it like this: let us consider one another to provoke unto love and good works. They recognize the dangers around them. Not only do they rely on the deity above them, not only do they respond to the duties assigned to them, but watch this, Watch what they do. They remember the determinations about them. They needed to remember what they were fighting for, and so does the church. They had to remember, why did we start in the first place? They were fighting for their faith. More was at stake in Jerusalem than just a wall. Nehemiah knows that the very worship of Jehovah was in the balance. Remember, as you pray and labor for your church, that the future of your worship is at stake. What you do now will determine the atmosphere of worship in this church for a long time to come. Be careful that you do not allow the enemy to empty your altar, silence your praise, and extinguish your testimony. But not only were they fighting for their faith, watch this, they were also fighting for their families. Nehemiah knew that the struggle was for the very lives of their families. If they succeeded, their families would live. If they failed, then they would all die. You must understand that this wall is to protect the city. And if they failed, that people would be able to enter the city and kill them. The struggle in this church is just as real. You are fighting to maintain a place of worship that will impact your family. Be careful that you take the time to count the costs for the families and the community as you seek the Lord's will for your church. But then watch this. Not only they're fighting for their faith, not only they're fighting for their families, but watch this. They're fighting for their future. The very future of Jerusalem and Jewish faith was on the line during this time of conflict. These people were battling not just for themselves and the needs that were currently at hand, but they were fighting for the next generation and all future generations to come. No one knew that future, but they knew that the future rested on what they did right then. The same could be said concerning the struggles that we are entering now. No one in this room knows what the future holds for our church. However, it is certain that it's your future, whether bright or dim, rest on the decisions you make at this crucial time. That is why you need to seek the Lord in prayer and take the right steps of faith so that you may arrive at the bright and hopeful future the Lord has placed in us. That's why we need wisdom while we work. James 1:5 says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given unto him. Wisdom while we work.